Backbone has cycled through each of the routes in the food router and added them to Backbone.history.handlers. The Backbone.history object is what actually takes care of managing the state of your application. It monitors the URL for changes, and when it sees a route that's listed in its list of handlers, it calls the function. Let's take our last dive into Backbone source to see how it does this. Let's add a breakpoint here to pause execution and start working through the code. Reloading pauses at the breakpoint, so let's step inside start. These lines determine if the app can use the hash change and push state events to monitor the URL for changes. Since we didn't tell Backbone to use push state, it will default to hash change. If we want to use push state, we could call start like this. Backbone gets the current URL fragment here. This is a precaution in case the app is loaded with one of the routes already in the URL. This section will run if we said we wanted push state and hash changes also available. This section will load if the app is loaded in an iframe. Older browsers do not support the Add Event Listener API. So if the app is loaded in an older browser, it will set Add Event Listener to a function that calls attach event. This section sets up the listener for either push state, hash change, or if neither one of them is available, then it fallbacks to polling the URL for changes every 50 milliseconds. We're checking for the hash change event, so we add this listener here. We're done with this part, so I'll click resume to finish running through all the code. Now that check URL will be called when there's a hash change, let's add a breakpoint here and walk through it. Let's click this button to change the URL's fragment. Check URL gets the current fragment and calls load URL. Load URL is what compares the new URL against the list of handlers. It gets the current fragment, then it goes through the list of handlers for some that have a route that matches the current URL. I'll add a breakpoint here to let us skip over the details of some. It's paused right here at the breakpoint. Checking the scope, we can see that this handler is the one for the clear route. It tests the route against the current page's fragment, and they don't match. So I'll click resume to get to the next handler. Now it's checking the select route. Notice fragment right here. The fragment starts out with select, so the test does match. Remember when we walked through what happens when a router is set up? This is the callback function that was created. This line gets the parameter from the URL. Then it executes the callback function that's set up in food router. After that, it just returns. And that's it. We finished digging through how routing and state management work. But don't lose track of the big picture. Backbone.history.start sets up an event listener to watch the URL for changes. When it does change, Backbone cycles through its list of handlers, looking for one that matches the URL. When it finds one, it executes the callback function associated with that route.